Hello, Anne.
Hi, Anne. Good to see you.
Yeah.
If you are ready, we just start with the questions.
Okay.
Do you know the word integrity?
Yes, I know it very well.
And how would you define integrity for someone who doesn't know the word?
Well, it has to do with values and heart values, values of truth or authenticity. And it's a difficult word, actually, because it's not a word that people are familiar with. Integral means something that belongs to something else. So one has to ask, what does integrity belong to? And I would say that it belongs to the ancient values of trust, which have pretty well gone from our world, and respect, very much respect for the earth, respect for whatever is on the earth, whether it's people, animals, trees, flowers. Really, it's love, actually, isn't it?
What means integrity for you personally?
Personally, it means to be true to my life path. It means, first of all, to discover my life path, which takes a long time, maybe 40, 50 years before you know it. And then it needs perseverance and honesty to follow it. And it needs a certain focus. You have to have the focus on what your life is about and what you want to bring to your life and give to your life and give from your life. All that is part of integrity, I think. Yeah. So with me, it took a long time for me to find my path, and came through a dream. I had a dream of a cosmic woman as big as the sky, and I was lying down at her feet, little tiny me and great big goddess. And she told me to focus my attention more centrally, to, well, I suppose really to concentrate on what I wanted to do and to make it the focus of my effort and my attention. So that is, in a sense, where integrity came in with that dream. Because before that, I was like most people, all over the place, well, shall I marry this man or that man? Will I bring up 1 children or 5 children? All the questions that come in life. Will I have a job, or what kind of a job? Will it be a job I like or one I don't like? I was very lucky. I was a dress designer, and that was a very nice job for a few years. I also traveled widely all over the world, and that developed my integrity too, because I saw that the countries I traveled to were completely unknown to my culture in the West. They were Indian culture, Chinese culture, Japanese culture, Indonesian culture, and they all had their own integrity, which was reflected in the works of art, because art reflects integrity if the artist is true to his own soul.
How important is integrity for you on your personal scale of values?
It's the foundation, really, because what I'm doing is as true as I can make it from my own soul. It's guidance that I've followed for a very long time from what my mother called higher beings. So it's my really devotion to those higher beings and what they told me when I was 15, 20, or whatever it was. They said I had work to do with the feminine, to do with women. So in a sense, the quest to find out what I was supposed to do was a form of integrity, by following what I was told to do when I was very young, but didn't discover until I was much older. And really following the path, you just have to follow your path, and that needs integrity, that needs courage, that needs authenticity, being true to yourself.
Is there anybody especially of integrity for you, a person you could think of, and who would that be?
That would be Sir David Attenborough, who I think is the most person with the greatest integrity, because there again, he followed his life path, he followed his calling, his mission, and he's done it wonderfully well. He's now 95, He started probably when he was 30 or something like that. And his path has unfolded for him in a miraculous way because he lived at the right time for the right thing that he was doing. So to me, he represents the highest integrity. And the other person I would recommend for that is the Dalai Lama. I've just been preparing a talk I'm giving in 2 weeks' time, and I've put him at the very beginning because he's always been true to himself in the most extreme difficulties, challenges, and sorrows in leaving his country. But he's never faltered in teaching the world what we really need to know and what the world has mostly forgotten.
How of integrity would you perceive yourself? And if you have to give yourself like a number between 1 and 10, what would you say?
I don't think that's for me to give. That would be for other people to give. Also, I would add one more person to the list, and that's the Queen, our own English Queen, because she's had total integrity. She's now 95. She's never deviated from her path of duty and service. That's another aspect of integrity, is service.
Would you think of a single event or a special experience in your life that kind of added to the level of integrity that you embody today?
I think training to be a Jungian analyst was part of that from 1980 to 2000, when I was practicing also, because that needed integrity. But I would say my writing is the greatest challenge and the greatest appeal to integrity, because if you're writing from a very deep soul level, you have to keep that integrity of the soul. So I think I've kept that for 20 years, hopefully. Also, I think I will show you my book, because this is the fruit.
Yeah, you know what? I'm
there.
mirroring you. Yes. Yes.
So that is the fruit of my path of following my soul, as it were.
Yes. Let's come to a bigger scale, like the worldview. How important do you think is integrity if you think of the challenges that we just face?
Look at Ukraine. You couldn't get a better example. The courage and the fearlessness and the fortitude and the willingness to suffer in the cause of keeping their country for themselves and not surrendering to the enemy, and not surrendering to really the old patriarchal order. That's what Putin represents, not Russia, but Putin, because he's showing the cruelty really of that old order and the ruthlessness of it. So the people who are standing up to it are giving an incredible example to the whole world of what it means to have true integrity. And also, I would say the people who are receiving the poor refugees, the Poles in particular, who suffered so much under Russia, and before that under the Nazi regime, they've known what suffering is. And therefore, they're able to really, their hearts are ready to be opened. And they have been opened with great true compassion and really giving what they have to give from their heart, which is a wonderful lesson for humanity as well. So we have two lessons: one, the courage and the integrity of the Ukrainians, and two, the compassion and capacity to give and to love of the people who are receiving the refugees, not only the Poles, but the people of Moldova, people of Romania, Hungary. It's really history repeating itself, and it's very, very painful for people who remember the earlier suffering. But out of that will come possibly a new world order. I don't know, I hope so.
What would be possible if the level of integrity would rise significantly on the whole planet?
Well, we would have that new world order if that was possible, but I don't think we're there yet, because I think there are other tyrannical regimes which are lying in waiting, like bears or wolves or foxes. Then it's not the people, but the people are unconscious. The people are unconscious of the values which really need to guide the whole planet now. And one can see with the Russian people that they're actually, they can't receive the news that's coming to the rest of the world because it's all censored. And anybody who protests is arrested and imprisoned. So that's not very helpful for the people. But there's also all the Chinese people who are under the thumb of their leader. And the problem of the world is that for century or millennia, 4,000 years, we've had leaders who have behaved in exactly the way that Putin is behaving. It's not a new pattern. It's a very, very ancient pattern. And in that old pattern, the people just had to go along with whatever tyrant was ruling them. They had no choice. And this is something that the people of the world have to find the courage to get rid of these dreadful leaders and choose different leaders, not ones who are wanting absolute power, but ones who want to serve their people, truly serve their people. When that happens, we'll have a new world and new peace, true peace, because there won't be any peace until the people wake up all over the world and get rid of these tyrannical rulers. Hopefully, most of them are getting quite old now, and they won't be here forever. But we must be careful not to replace them with similar kind of leaders, similar tyrants. So in a way, any leader needs to go through a psychological assessment before he's allowed to take over a government. And it's not any good to say, well, it'll be better with women governed everything, because it would not be better, because women can fall into the same pit as men when it comes to power. When women can be, what's the word, taken over by the will to power, just as men can. And that has to be something to be watched and to be guarded against.
Yeah, thank you. I was about to ask you, as an author of this book, The Dream of the Cosmos, A Quest for the Soul, what are, from your special perspective, the most important ingredients for integrity building?
I think a good childhood is essential, with loving parents and not critical parents, and not parents who want to achieve things for their children or through their children, but who genuinely love their children and watch them unfold like a flower or a tree growing, and who give them the right values by their relationship, because the relationship of the parents is what the child copies in his soul, in the balance between the masculine and the feminine in his own soul comes from the way the parents treat each other. So integrity comes from that. You can, or whether you have two women parents or two men parents, it would be the same thing. Although it's better to have the balance of the male and the female for the child's psyche. So I would say that it starts there in childhood, and then it grows up in what kind of education children are given, what are the values that are they given, are they protected from bullying in school? That's very important. As is the teacher a protector and a guardian of those values? Does she look upon each child as her own special responsibility to develop his integrity, his or her integrity, and also his or her gifts? Because out of the process of childhood and education comes the flowering of a child's gifts, whatever they might be. They may be artistic, they may be practical, they may be mathematical or engineering. Each child is a different gift to life, if you like. Each child comes into this world from another place in the starry space, incarnates in this world for a purpose. And I think one of the things of education is to ask the child, why have you come to this planet? What are you here to do? And how can you keep the values of integrity in what your life path is going to unfold, in the future? How can you guard those values of love, service, integrity, and compassion? I would say those four: love, service, integrity, and compassion. Those are the 4 to be developed in children, and then they will flourish. They can't help but flower. And we would have a different world altogether if we could reform the education system in every country so that there's more emphasis on the arts and on poetry and on music. And I don't mean modern music, which I think is dreadful. I mean music like Mozart or Beethoven or Bach, you know, which will give them what it is to be a great creative being. And that will give them a model. If they had that in schools, it would be better. And then they should be taught how to play an instrument, and they should be encouraged to paint. And also, as part of their classes, once a week, they should have a class on listening to each other's dreams. That's a very important aspect of education that's completely neglected. I learned about it from a school in Brazil, in one of the favelas there, the very poorest section of the country. And there was one woman trained in Jungian analysis who had an influence in the school, and she set aside Friday afternoons for children listening to each other's dreams and painting them.
Wow. And
many little children were healed of their terrible wounds and given goals they had no dream of achieving when they started, but the dreams opened the possibility of them achieving those dreams. And one little boy he drew a sun and a football, and he became a star football player. So that's what a dream once a week, with the teacher listening, the teacher not saying anything, but just listening, and the children telling their dreams one by one to each other. That would be an amazing educational shift. And that would bring the heart in, because these dreams come from the heart.
These are so beautiful advices, for the people to come, how to create something different, something new.
Something completely different, and something that doesn't fit into the exams that they have to pass. That's completely outside the exams. And indeed, everything to do with the arts should be outside the exams, I think. Because the exams are really not good for the child, because they focus on the left hemisphere of the brain, and the right hemisphere, which is the creative and imaginative side, gets closed down with too many exams, and then they never get in touch again. And so we have out of that comes bureaucracy, the bureaucratic mind, which is the left hemisphere of the brain, which is very good. It's necessary because it helps us deal with all the things we have to deal with in our daily lives. But it needs to be balanced with the right hemisphere and the imagination. Someone who is in touch with the numinous or with the divine ground has the right hemisphere opened. He doesn't have to be religious, but he has opened to miracles.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That really leads me to my next question, the divine ground. So what is the link between integrity and the soul? What is the relationship, or how would you?
Integrity is a feature or a function or a quality. It's a quality of the soul. That's what it is. A quality of the soul. And that's why I say you have to first of all become aware of the need for it, and then you have to learn how to follow it in your life. But if you have good models in the parents and the teachers, you will automatically absorb it as you grow up. But some people have had such dreadful lives that they have to discover it with great difficulty for themselves, and they do. There are many people who've had terrible beginnings, who've had amazing breakthroughs, as it were, in finding their soul path and sticking to it.
Yeah, we talked now about how another future could look like, and I'm also interested in what can we do now. So my question would be, does the society you live in right now allow you to live a life in integrity with your values?
It does allow me to, but I live a very, very retired life. I don't travel anymore. I don't go to the city anymore. I do everything on Zoom because it's the only way I have of communicating. My society is free, but it runs the risk of too much government control. And I can see this coming in my daughter's life and my grandson's life. That could be a danger. This country is very wide awake to the need to be free of constant government control. But it is a danger, and that's the left hemisphere of the mind again. It's the bureaucratic mind that wants to have everything in a certain order. And unfortunately, with the COVID epidemic, it has given governments the chance to control people much more than they did. And that's a big danger, which we have to guard against. But in my personal life, I'm completely free, and I'm completely unbothered by this kind of thing. But I do see that it's a danger. And I do see that there's a danger in technology, that it can take over governments and governments can rule through it. And that is a very big danger indeed. At my age, it's not a worry, because I shall be gone by the time it might be coming in. And I hope there's no bureaucracy in the other world where I'm going.
Yeah. And I also would like to add, I mean, if you say you can live your life in integrity with your values, this is because you chose the path you've chosen. You took some decisions in your life, that's where
Yes.
we started, where you, oriented towards your soul, your mission. So
but I was very lucky, because I married the right man. If I'd married a politician or a businessman or a diplomat, I would never have been able to do what I've done. But because he was an introvert, both of us were introverts, I didn't want the social life. I didn't want that totally different kind of life. I could have had it, but I didn't want it. And luckily, at the right time, the right person came along. And so we've had over 60 years of marriage now, with him being an artist and therefore very concentrated on the inner world, and me being a writer. And that enabled both of us to keep this integrity that we felt we wanted right at the beginning of our marriage. But it's very important, the kind of person that you choose to live with, whether you can keep that integrity. Because if you're following a path where you have to do what you're told, if you're in the government, say, or if you're in the diplomatic service, or if you're in the business world, there are other values which come in, which may interfere with your values. It may not. I mean, it may depend on what happens in your life and what sort of person you are, but there is a risk because of the different values which govern the world, which are totally different from those which govern the soul. And there's a huge gap in our culture everywhere between the soul values and the worldly values. I've been reading, there's a wonderful book called The Gospel of the Beloved Companion, which is written by Mary Magdalene. Mm-hmm. And it's the only authentic gospel that we have. But in it, Jesus says something which really struck me. He said, you have to overcome the ruler of the world. And the ruler of the world is the power principle. Mm-hmm. And if you follow the power principle, you lose your integrity. It's so simple.
If you follow the power principle, you lose your integrity.
Integrity, yeah.
It's a strong one. So would you agree that maybe the introverts, I count myself into that, and the interview series I'm doing is actually also to bring the knowledge that is there in the introverts to the world. So would you agree that we have to add something important, especially in this time?
Yes, very much so. Yeah. Because the culture has been so extroverted for a very long time, for 70 years or so, it's got used to the social media formula sort of thing, so that people live half their life or 3/4 of their life on social media, and they forget who they are. And this will become even more dangerous when they have the virtual reality goggles that children are going to be wearing. They won't know which world they're in. And that would be a very big danger for losing your integrity and losing the sense of who you are. So I would say that introverts do have a lot to offer. They've pretty well been ignored, as I say, for a very long time. we don't seem to have any great writers or really great artists at the moment. Oh, can you think of any yourself?
I mean, I'm reading a lot of Charles Eisenstein. You are probably aware
Yes,
of
I'm familiar with him, yes.
literature, but the thoughts and the spirit.
Yeah. Well, he has integrity.
Yeah.
There are people, very many people actually, in the field of the
Yeah.
environment who
Yeah.
have that. And look at Greta Thunberg, for instance.
Yeah.
She has absolutely single-minded. She's what we call a sibyl. In the time of the Romans, she would have been a sibyl who would have spoken to the multitude and said, do this and do that, or don't do this, don't do that. And she would have been listened to. She is listened to today, which is good.
A little bit similar to an oracle, or?
Yes, but much more to do with, oracle is more coming from the other world.
Yeah.
Sibyl is more the intermediary between the other world and the world around her.
Great, I love that.
Yeah.
Because it's so present. A last word about the Ukraine. If you think of the war in Ukraine, and you should link it to, on the one hand side, to integrity and to the subject of the soul that we just covered, what would you say?
I would say that they are being true to their soul, and they're being true to the soul of the Ukraine earth that they are born from. They love their piece of earth, their country. And I've been discovering that actually Ukraine has a very interesting past, because 6,000 years ago, more, let me think, 4, 5, 6, no more than that, 8,000 years ago, it had a most extraordinary Neolithic culture in which it made the most beautiful artifacts and statues and pots and all sorts of things, which were not only in Ukraine, they were also in Romania, Moldova, Bulgaria, Greece, Crete, and southern Italy. So the whole huge area was a tremendously artistic and peaceful civilization for about 3,500 years, which is a long time. It's 1,000 years longer than us, or more than 1,000 years. And Ukraine was part of that. And I think that soul goes back to that time, the really intrinsic quality of that land is there in their soul. And that's what they're fighting for. That's what they love. And that's what they're giving their lives for, really. Hopefully they'll come back in another life and find things are better than they are now. But I don't see, I mean, there's going to be a terrible amount of people dying. And these bombs now that Putin is using are terrifying, because they're far more large and dangerous than anything we've ever had exploding on people, really, other than the nuclear bomb. And I just pray that he doesn't use the nuclear bomb or nuclear weapons, which he's perfectly capable of doing, because he has a psychopathic mind, and life, the preservation of life, means nothing to him in relation to the goal he's trying to achieve, which is to take Ukraine under the control of Russia. And it never was that way, except under certain of the Tsars and Stalin, of course. But before that, long ago, it must have been a free country, like other free countries, going back a long way. Anyway, I think I've said all I can about that. It's the most terrible situation to watch and not be able to do anything about, except to pray and to hope that some miraculous thing will happen to stop the actual continuation of the war. I don't know what that can be. Apparently something astrologically is coming up in April, on the 12th of April, which is important and might lead to a shift of something or other.
Yes. I mean, I was about to ask you, because, you know, the newspaper I read today, the headline was, "We have to do something about that war. We have to act." But it was really about getting involved in the war and, yeah, bringing military there?
Well, we are sending military equipment, but the problem is if we step over the line, we could be in a nuclear war, and that is what's stopping England, certainly. I mean, the UK feels that it can't risk its population of 80 million, no, sorry, 66 million. It can't risk having that population. One bomb could destroy the whole of England. Terrifying, because it's much bigger than the hydrogen bomb that we've had before, and it's much bigger than the bomb that destroyed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So it's a terrifying prospect, and I quite see why governments are hesitating. They don't know what to do to get round the problem of how to help Ukraine without bringing a bomb down on themselves. This is what's so difficult. So this is why we have to just pray, and we can send them the things we are sending them the tank, to take out the tanks and to do that. And what I was hoping was that I know that a lot of Russian recruits or soldiers have surrendered. And I was hoping if say several thousand could surrender, that would stop the war, because Putin might put in another 10,000, but they might surrender as well. And that could be one factor. The other factor I was hoping, which I don't see much sign of, there was a little sign of women in Russia saying, we no longer will tolerate the loss of our sons in these ridiculous wars led by tyrants, and we will come out, all of us, millions of us will protest. And they couldn't stop millions of women coming out. So that is the other thing, that the surrender of the soldiers and the marching of millions of women in Russia. It's no good millions of women marching in other cities. It would have no effect at all. It has to be from Russia itself, in Russia itself. So those are the two things that I'm hoping that something might happen, which would just shift the balance of power from defeat and humiliation and really annihilation, because I don't see Ukraine surviving with Russian rulers in it. The people would not tolerate that, so there would be more fighting. I don't see the solution in the usual kind of way of defeat. It has to be some other kind of resolution of this whole combat. And I hope it will be a lesson, whatever the resolution is. I hope it will be a lesson to other potential tyrants, that they don't go down the same route with their people.
Yeah, it's really hard to witness, and I also sense this helplessness. And I was wondering, what could we do? How could we contribute to something that is different, that we know from before? Because there's no solution, in the field, how we know it.
In the context of what we know, there's no solution. But I do feel that if somebody had any contact with Russian women, it wouldn't need many contacts, say 100 or something like that, to really bring the Russian women out en masse, because they have to not come out in 10s or 20s. It has to be thousands and thousands of women, and mainly mothers who they've lost already 7,000, definitely Russian soldiers have been killed, but that's 7,000 mothers weeping over the loss of their beloved sons. If one could get into the heart of the Russian women, the Russian mothers, I think something could happen. It's one of the only things that I see a solution from.
Yes.
And it has to be, why should women carry children for 9 months, give birth to them, bring them up for 20 years, and then see them killed? This has been the pattern for 4,000 years that women have had to tolerate and put up with, because they had no choice. But I think women have choice now. And I think there's strong enough sense of their own worth and their own importance. After all, they're half the human race. If their voice was heard, it would at least give pause to these tyrants who think that they can just ride over everything. Also, I should mention that in the UN, in 2000, the UN passed a resolution, which is Resolution 1325, that women should be included in all negotiations, peace negotiations. And that hasn't happened at all. So why not? Perhaps that's a question you could ask your friends in Europe, really, to bring that to consciousness and say, why has this resolution not been paid attention to?
That's very, very valuable to have this link to something concrete.
Concrete, yeah.
It was not given integrity to. Yeah, it was.
That's right. And when we look at the dreadful, I mean, for instance, our invasion of Iraq was a disaster, which should never have happened. And America and the UK together made a terrible mistake that had no integrity. And the aftermath had no integrity. They went there for the oil, nothing to do with the weapons. It was to get hold of the oil in the Middle East. And then you've had all the terrible Syrian situation with a tyrant in charge there, Bashar. He's another tyrant. And you had the terrible bombing by Russia of all the wonderful Syrian cities like Aleppo. I've been living through all that and writing about it as I've been going along. So you haven't had any integrity anywhere in politics for a very, very long time, as far as I can remember anyway. The First and Second World War were really engineered by people who were in the control of the power complex.
Yeah, and that means, I mean, that's the path that I support or I go. I'm really aware of the healthy function of shame. So there would be many things to apologize for.
Yeah.
And that could be also a beginning.
Yes, that would be integrity to apologize.
Makes it even worse, yeah?
Yeah.
To really say, wow, we contributed to that.
Yeah.
Contributed even to the situation with Russia and Ukraine now, yeah?
Yeah.
On some level.
Yes, you feel responsible, and I feel responsible as an English person for what we did in Iraq and triggering the whole disaster in the Middle East. You know, you couldn't have got a more stupid policy possibly. So, but I couldn't do anything.
Yeah, but really that gives me an impulse. So instead of pushing men to do that, we could just start as women.
Yeah.
To pronounce, to speak up with our apologize.
And to bring in this different model, this different perspective on life, that life, for me, my whole book is about the world being a sacred order. It's not our property. We are here to look after it. And we are not looking after it. We're just going on our own path, which is to do with the power thing and getting the best we can or the most we can out of life, rather than giving our great gifts to life, because we all have great gifts. And yours may be one of the peacemaker.
Feel seen in that. Thank you. Is there anything you would like to add in terms of integrity that wasn't covered by the question so far? Something you want to share?
I think we've covered pretty well everything that we could. I think the only thing I would mention is the importance of beauty. The importance of the integrity of beauty and how the integrity of beauty can be destroyed by commerce and commercializing art and commercializing everything, instead of allowing the beauty to flower in the way that it wants to in each person's soul. So we're told, I mean, the whole thing of our being labeled consumers is a dreadful term. If you're a consumer, you automatically have something you're going to consume. Integrity doesn't come into it. So I think we have to change the word consumer into the word server, maybe, or giver of our own life creativity to the whole, something like that. And that would take integrity into up to another level, so that we can really see the soul values at a totally different level. It's almost like Zuckerberg's Zuckerberg's metaverse. We have to create a metaverse of integrity values.
I love that. That's wonderful. Let's go for that.
Okay, you go for that. And that's a very good note to end on, I think.
Yeah, a metaverse.
A metaverse of integrity and new values. And that may bring Zuckerberg off his high perch. Okay. Anyway, lovely to talk to you, Anne. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, thank you for your voice in it.
Good interview, this one. Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. Okay, bye-bye.